Poems to a Listener, readings and conversation with contemporary poets.
The dulcimer sings from fretted maple throat of the doe's swift poise, the fox's fleeting step, and the music of hounds upon the outward slope, stirring the night, drumming the ridge-strewn way, the anvil's strength, and the silence after that aches and cries unhushed into the day.
Welcome to Poems to a Listener. I'm Henry Lyman, and in this half-hour program, we'll be visiting with poet James Still and listening to him read from the Wolfpen Poems, published by Berea College Press. Since 1939, James Still has been living in an old log house on Deadmare Branch in the hills of Knott County, Kentucky. And there he's written novels, stories, and poems like the one we just heard, all of which play in the Appalachian landscape, as does the dulcimer.
It's made for accompaniment mainly. You sing and strum the dulcimer. We used to think that the dulcimer was invented in my neighborhood. We know a little better now.
This house of yours originally belonged to a dulcimer maker.
Yes. He left this place to me as a lifetime inheritance. It's mine as long as I live. And he used to make these dulcimers himself and used to go about peddling them for $4 or $5 each.
Now, this dulcimer in the poem sings of the hills, the hounds, the doe, the fox. In your own mind, do you liken your work, your poetry, yourself perhaps to some extent, to the dulcimer, or to an instrument in that sense?
I hadn't thought about that, but I suppose I do, in a way. All my stories and poems are a place, a definite place in this world. And I'm afraid I wouldn't know how to write otherwise. Troublesome Creek. These people here were born for mottled hills, the narrow trails, the creek bed roads, quilting dark ridges, and pennyroyal valleys, where troublesome gathers forked waters into one strong body. They have come down to push the hills away, to shape sawn timbers into home seats, to heap firm stones into chimneys, and rear their young before splendid fires. And troublesome floods with spring's dark waters dries to sand in summer, and purple martins flock to poled gourds, molting stained feathers which fall like blackened snow on clapboard roofs of hill townsmen biding eternal time. And men have waited as mountains long have waited.
Troublesome Creek.
It's a troublesome creek. It floods. We've had several rather disastrous floods. One this past year. Usually about every 10 years, we have one that destroys crops mainly and homes that are unwisely built. But they keep building back. There's no other place except to climb the side of the mountains. I lived on Troublesome Creek for 6 years. Then I moved over 9 miles to Deadmare Branch, between Deadmare Branch and Wolfpen Creek, facing on Little Car Creek. And these waters box me in against the mountains.
The mountain really imprints itself on the people.
It does indeed. Their lives are greatly influenced by these mountains that have closed them in and shut them away. And the 20th century was a long time coming, and it only recently arrived. And while the roads have brought some good things in, it has also, in a sense, destroyed us. it has destroyed our culture, our individuality as people. Our knowledge about how to do things, how to work with our hands, how to make things, how to make a mountain sled. We couldn't have wagons because of no roads. How to lay the worm of a fence, how to do anything for ourselves. We were self-sufficient. Spring on Troublesome Creek. Not all of us were warm, not all of us. We are winter lean. Our faces are sharp with cold, and there's a smell of wood smoke in our clothes. Not all of us were warm, though we hugged the fire through the long, chilled nights. We have come out into the sun again. We have untied our knot of flesh. We are no thinner than a hound or mare, or an unleaved poplar. We have come through to the grass, to the cows calving in the lot.
Who are the people this poem talks about?
When you know how a good many of us lived up in these hollows, in these log houses, even today I wonder how many people come through in these very hard winters that we have had in recent years. And so these are the people I'm talking about.
They're seen as being no thinner than the poplars, the hound, or the mare.
We're all in it together.
Right.
We live in this world together, the trees, the foxes, the hounds.
And they have to make it through also.
They made it through, and we did too.
And how about the horses?
Horses get mighty thin by spring. Horse swapping. The first day of court. The first day of court was horse swapping day over at the county seat. And they'd come on that one day.
And they came down from the hills, down the creek bed.
To swap their nags. Splintery as legs of spring folds, the willows bend over Troublesome's sudden banks, hemming drifts of sand against slow, thin water, against the mare's stiff heels, wheeling in the dry creek bed with casual step. And the sun-pierced shade of willows settles unsteadily among the throng of stallions, champing their bits and straining new leather with arrogant heads. High in their polished saddles the traitors ride, with stinging lash and blunt spur deep against the side of goaded pony, of anxious filly swinging heavily, of spavined mare plucking heels with sharp precision from bedding sand. Combed, curried, and clipped, their smooth breasts glisten, and long muscular necks rise clean and springy into tight bridles. The traders measure with keen practiced glance the height from wither to croup, feel trembling flesh, rub hard careless hands over quivering muscles, and peer coldly into moist sad eyes. Only the foals toss unbounded heads with flash of hock and unsheared flowing manes, flexing clumsy legs in short unhindered quests down the aisles of sand to the hill's uplifted girth. An untamed heart is swift upon the earth.
This was a yearly event.
Yes, every year. Women stayed out of town. There was no trading that day. There were a lot of drinking. In fact, twice in my time, men were killed.
A lawless day.
Yeah. The sheriff left town. He couldn't be found, and the deputies couldn't find them. So in a sense, there was no law that day. Court day. I used to go to court. We had no movies or no entertainment in our little town. So when circuit court sat, here was the drama. And we would go and sit and watch these dramas played out. And many of them had to do with land, landmarks, ownership of special land. 2 inches of land was almost worth a man's life. They have come early into the town. Dark as plowed earth, the rising and the setting out. On the creek bed road, down the stony waters of Troublesome, down the cold, thin flowing, willow dark and waking. They have come early to justice, following the water's sound out of the beechwood hollows. Why the dark journey? Was the landmarked mood? Perhaps it walked alone, wanting to stir itself and rest slantwise upon another place. Will justice gladden your summer's plowing? The jury sits upon the bench, the judge sleeps in his chair, and the noon-bright hills crowd the tall windows, spreading their enormous curtain against the lights pouring, heat-waved and burning. They have sat long upon the bench, with justice droning out of the hornet's throat. Do not indict me. Let me shake your hand. If the landmark wanders, I shall take your part. My testimony is sound. I swear by the hills, by these eternal landmarks of the heart.
The hills are unmarkable.
Nature resists being chopped up and marked, and it's healing itself at all times.
Healing over the
Yes.
cuts and the marks.
Mm-hmm. Who owns these things anyway? All I can see belongs to me. I can look at it. That's all I want. Anyway, I can look at it, and I can walk on it. My neighbors don't care.
And in that sense, it belongs to you. Whether it's yours legally or not
Yeah,
makes no
right,
difference,
no.
does it?
These county lines, they wear these state lines. I never saw one anywhere. This side of the line, Kentucky, looks to me just exactly like the line in Virginia, and somebody tells me there's a line there, I can't see it. I wrote this poem called Statement to a Candidate. It all depends on how many faces you can wear. You can travel a distance on 3 or 4. On a dozen, you can go almost anywhere. They tell me you're a good man for county judge, a good man despite a conscience as flexible as leather, despite the easy promises you genially swear, despite the quake of laughter to soothe the voter's grudge. I am told one should choose political brothers, and a man must raise his hand for somebody. If I should raise my hand and I lift it for you, for which face shall I vote? Yours is shifty as weather. I think I would choose the one Adam wore, if I could find it under all the others. A man must raise his hand for somebody. I think Kentucky politics are unique.
Of course, the poem goes far beyond Kentucky politics.
I know it does. I like to think that these poems have some universal application.
Well, you're looking for a universal face.
Right, I am indeed, yes.
One face beneath all the others,
Mm-hmm.
which is
The face Adam wore.
the face Adam wore.
That was the first one before they began to make other faces. Began to assume other identities and pretensions and assumptions.
Is that original face the one that you're looking for through your writing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On Double Creek. In this place at that time, everybody took care of their old, and they were honored and cared for. But there were always a few people who had nobody, who had absolutely nothing and nobody. So the county had to look after them, bury them eventually. The county owned a piece of land adjoining our farm, and it was called the Poor Farm. And this was where they put these people to look after themselves. And I used to see them. I was born on Double Creek, on a 40-acre hill. North was the Buckaloo Ridge, south at our land's end, the county poor farm with hungry fields and furrows as crooked as an adder's track. Across the creek I saw the paupers plowing. I can remember their plodding in the furrows, their palsied hands, the worn flesh of their faces, and their odd shapelessness, and their tired cries. I can remember the dark, swift martins in their eyes.
Their faces are worn, as their bodies are kind of shapeless. But then in the end you say you remember the dark, swift martins in their eyes.
They had already gone from the world I knew.
They'd already left. Part of them had already
left. It was just the living dead.
So their spirits had flown.
And then it was all over, and they were gone. But I remembered. Mountain Coal Town. I never entered this particular town. I used to look at it across the river. These stark houses hung upon the hills, the ragged slopes and interstices of the barren rock are havens for miners in an upper world. Here is that pool of daylight and their stars, waiting after darkness in the gutted cave, immersed in coal and slate and a flickering gleam. A sweeter dampness rises from the rivers flowing than leaks from the black caverns of the earth. And the ear here turns to man's firm laughter and the long clear whistle of the cardinals singing.
Did you ever go down into them?
Yes, a number of times. I do not wish to go again. Every descent, I promised myself I would never do it again. I'm very unhappy in mines.
The poem shows it.
And these men who work in mines, they're heroes of a sort, and their life is in danger, great danger.
In those days especially.
Not only those days. Think of the people we have had killed in our own county. We had at least 2 major accidents this past year in mines, one which killed 8 or 9 people.
Just in this past year?
Mm-hmm. They're quite common. Earthbred. Under stars cool as the copperhead's eyes, under hill horizons cut clean and deft with wind, beneath the surface night, below earth and rock, the picks strike into veins of coal, oily and rich, and centuries damp. They dig with short, heavy strokes, straining shoulders practiced and bulging with labor, crumbling the marrow between the shelving slate, breaking the hard, slow-yielding seams. Bent into flesh knots, the miners dig this earth bread, this stone meat, these fruited bones. This is the 8-hour death, the daily burial in a dark harvest lost as any dead.
You call the coal earth bread, stone meat, marrow.
It buys bread.
It buys bread. It was also once living.
Yeah, right.
We forget that.
It buys life. It is a recycling from life after death to life again.
Right. But the miner's death is a daily one, says the poem.
Yes. They go into this tomb of sorts.
The daily burial of sorts. The sky in the poem is like the roof of a mine.
There's danger. There's no mercy.
Up above, too, not just in the mine, you mean.
Yep. We've had bad men. We have other places, too, as well. And some, though, were quite famous. And their names, sometime they'd say Bad John, Bad somebody else, Bad Harry. Now, if these men lived long enough, they usually eventually joined the church and were baptized. And presumably on high up there. So I wrote this poem. Are you up there, Bad Jack? Are you up there, Bad Jack? Did he take you in? Bad Jack means, baptized though you were in your sinking days, aged 80, your path greased to heaven. They say your sins killed every fish in the river, every sunfish, crappie, and stone toader between Mac Roberts and Hazard. In your time, Bad Jack, you rammicked, you cut, you shot. When you stirred, life was barely tolerable. You slew 6. You slew hope. You slew scores of tomorrows. Are you up there, Bad Jack? If you are, if he took you in, I think I'll choose the other place. Okay.
You'd go down there, as opposed to up there.
Yeah.
Anything to get away from him.
Well, I just assume he really isn't up there. You see what I mean? No. But there are 2 lines in this poem I think it save it. You slew 6. You slew hope. You slew scores of tomorrows.
The tomorrows of all those people he slew.
Mm-hmm.
And their hope.
You don't just kill a man. Think you kill all that might follow through his children down to eternity.
Right, his progeny.
Yes. Pattern for death. The spider puzzles his legs and rests his web on aftergrass. No wind stir here to break the quiet design. Nothing protests the weaving of taut threads in a ladder of silk. He is clever. He is fastidious and intricate. He is skilled with his cords of hate. Who can escape through the grass? The crane fly quivers its body in paralytic sleep. The giant moths shed their golden dust from fettered wings, and the spider speeds his lust. Who reads the language of direction? Where may we pass? Through the immense pattern sheer as glass.
There's the spider's web in the grass, and then there's this immense pattern, sheer as glass. A greater web?
Yes. Mm.
We can't pass through it, or we do. Do we, or don't we?
There's presumably a way, if anybody can find it.
To be able to read the language of direction.
Yes. Sometimes I say rather enigmatically to people, you're just going to have to be able to pass through the looking glass and get on the other side.
To be able to look back?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And observe?
To have the double vision.
How do you mean that?
If not triple. Eyes in the grass. A rusty grackle walks the apple's bough. He wanders through a green cloth of leaves with back arched impudently and pauses, plump-bodied and balanced, searching beneath. There are eyes in the grass, eyes lying still beneath stalk and pod, where doodles drill their earthen cones, and ants march in a forest of living swords. I think that neither the grackle's black eyes nor the ant's myopic sight has found me here, drowned in quivering stems, lost in wattled twigs of grass trees. Oh, I am lost to any wandering view. I am a hill uncharted. My breathing is the wind. I am horizon. I am earth's far end.
What's happened to you here?
I feel isolated, very isolated for many years. And I've always been interested in everything around me. Trees, grasses, weeds, insects. There's hardly a day when I'm out in the fields or woods or in the grass somewhere that I don't discover some insect I haven't seen before. And I'm just another insect. I'm just there in the grass too. And I'm not too sure that I'm superior to them. I don't know why they're there, and I don't know why I'm here. But I think there must be some sort of plan about it all, and this little insect is as important as I am.
Those are your eyes in the grass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One day when I was told that this land belonged to me, I went out in the yard, and I have some tree friends. I have tree friends. A lot of places I see marvelous trees. I went out, and the trees around me there, and I went up and I slapped every one of those trees, and I said, "You belong to me now." And then I also said, "I belong to you." And I don't care who has the deeds of these mountains around me. They're mine. They belong to me. Just like the clouds that come over, they're mine too.
You belong to them.
Let's hope. Mm-hmm. Heritage. I shall not leave these prisoning hills, though they topple their barren heads to level earth, and the forests slide uprooted out of the sky. Though the waters of Troublesome, of Trace Fork, of Sand Lake rise in a single body to glean the valleys, to drown lush pennyroyal, to unravel rail fences, though the sunball breaks the ridges into dust and burns its strength into the blistered rock, I cannot leave. I cannot go away. Being of these hills, being one with the fox stealing into the shadows, one with the newborn foal, the lumbering ox drawing green beech logs to mill, one with the destined feet of man climbing and descending, and one with death rising to bloom again, I cannot go. Being of these hills, I cannot pass beyond.
We've been visiting with poet James Still and listening to him read from the Wolfpen Poems, published by Berea College Press. I'm Henry Lyman. Thanks for being with us.
Poems to a Listener was produced by WFCR, Amherst, Massachusetts, with technical assistance by Sheldon Katzman. Financial assistance was provided by the Massachusetts Council on the Arts and Humanities, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Massachusetts Foundation for Humanities and Public Policy.